Hume's own segment tonight, very interesting situation. As you may remember, the Occupy Wall Street crew destroyed a bunch of private and public property in the name of protesting against the federal government. Well, now in Nevada, rancher Cliven Bundy is also protesting against the feds, and armed supporters of him have rallied out there in the high plains. While the left was largely silent about Occupy, it is not silent about Mr. Bundy.
This notion that Mr. Bundy has no other recourse but violence is anti-government violence is absolutely wrong. He's been waging his battle for 2 decades. He's lost.
They're nothing more than domestic terrorists. And I think that we are a country that people should follow the law. I repeat, what went on up there is domestic terrorism.
Well, at Factor Research Senator Reid, and we could find not one example, not one, that he publicly criticized the Occupy Wall Street movement. Same thing with Miss Brazil. They were silent. Joining us now from Washington, Fox News senior political analyst Bert Hume. All right, let's do with Reid first. I understand it's his home state. I understand, you know, he's got a perfect right to get involved with this situation. But Occupy Wall Street, pretty intense movement. One of those guys attacked me when I was in Washington, D.C., where Reid lives. And he didn't say a word about it. That's strange. Isn't it strange?
Well, you know, clearly he has, as you suggest, Bill, he has a right to an opinion about something that's happening in his own home state. And he's not wrong about I wouldn't call them domestic terrorists. I think that's over the top. But clearly the law is not on the side of Cliven Bundy and the others who are resisting on his behalf, since he's, what, 20 years in arrears on his grazing fees and refuses to recognize the authority of the federal government. So, you know, Bundy doesn't have much of a case. Reid is probably generally correct about him. But you're right. Occupy Wall Street occupied a square here in Washington where you're not supposed to stay overnight. They were there for weeks on end, and not terribly far from where Harry Reid himself lives, and not a peep. So clearly there's a bias there that is visible in his comments, or lack of them, where Occupy Wall Street is concerned. Okay,
so that's what really rankles me. And to correct Ms. Brazil, there's been no violence in Nevada. I mean, Mr. Bundy has not been violent. There have been people out there armed, but they are legally have a right to do that. We being the me, we the editorial we, I see the folly on both sides. I think that, look, if Mr. Bundy wants to be a protester and take the punishment that comes with his protest, we've had millions of patriots do that in our history. And you know, a conscientious objector, there he is. He doesn't believe that the federal government has a right to tell him where he can graze his cattle. Okay.
Well, I know that, Bill, but I mean, look, this is a country which recognizes property rights. That property that he's been grazing his cattle on is not his property.
I got it. But he has to take what comes. He has, right, but he has a right to make the objection.
Well, he does have the right to make the objection. That's what courts of law are for, and he's visited the courts of law several times and has lost every time. Now he and armed people in support of him, one of whom said they were, if there was any trouble, they were going to put the women and children out front so that the public could witness the spectacle of federal agents shooting on women and children. You may think that's just a nice form of protest, but it seems to me that's getting out there pretty far.
Okay, but Bundy didn't say that. That was somebody who obviously is disturbed. But the Wall Street people...
Yeah, but it's one of the people there with the guns.
Okay. But again, that's not Bundy. He didn't do it. It was somebody who got hopped up and went up there and made that foolish statement. But the Occupy Wall Street movement and Bundy are very similar. Very, very similar. They don't like the federal government. They don't like the system that you rightfully pointed out is lawful. All right? They don't like it. So on one hand, the Occupy people are going to try to tear it down, try to set it on fire, try to destroy it. And on the other hand, the Bundy people are going to say, blank you, we're not going to cooperate. We're going to do what we want. So the similarity, if you're going to condemn one, you have to condemn the other, in my opinion. Last word.
Well, I would just say that Occupy Wall Street seemed to me to be less in protest of the federal government than it was a protest of the private enterprise system and of the investment community that is exemplified by Wall Street, which is, you know, it's not a huge difference, but it's a difference.
Under the direction of the federal government, they're allowed through various agencies to do what they do.
Well, true enough, but it's just a slight difference there, Bill. I don't disagree with you about your basic premise, which is that these politicians, Nancy Pelosi chief among them, she went far beyond not saying anything about Occupy Wall Street. She was praising Occupy Wall Street as a great movement.
Right.
And of course, ultimately after a while, it's kind of disappeared without a trace. And you don't hear much about it anymore.
As we predicted it would. All right, Britt Hume, everybody directly ahead. If you oppose